decade, we're told the same story. Your focus fades, your memory slips, anxiety increases, cognitive decline is normal. But what if that story isn't entirely true? What if the brain isn't just a passive organ that slowly breaks down, but a biological system that responds to inputs? Today, we're going to talk about 4 peptides that are often discussed in research and clinical settings outside the US for focus, calm, brain repair, and long-term cognitive resilience. Semax, Selank, Cerebrolysin, Epitalon. This video is educational, not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I don't sell peptides. I research them, read the studies, and, when appropriate, share my own personal research at the end. This is Kirk with the Wellness Elevation channel. We have been covering peptides in the last couple months and will continue. So let's start with the foundation. So what peptides actually are? Peptides are short chains of amino acids, but unlike drugs, they don't force the body in one direction. Think of it like this. Drugs act like brute force commands. Peptides act like instructions the body already understands. They don't override physiology. They nudge existing biological programs back toward balance, repair, and function. That difference matters. The first one is Semax, and what Semax is doing on a cellular level. Semax is best understood as a neurological signal amplifier. At the cellular level, it influences B, D, N, F related signaling, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, dopaminergic and glutamatergic pathways, synaptic plasticity, how neurons communicate and adapt. Think of it like this. Semax doesn't add more brain cells. It improves how well the existing ones talk to each other. If your brain is a city, Semax doesn't build new roads. It upgrades bandwidth, traffic lights, and signal clarity. This is why it's often discussed in relation to focus, learning, mental stamina, and executive function. Semax is mainly administered in 2 ways. Most commonly discussed is intranasally. Nasal route is favored in some camps of thought due to proximity to brain signaling pathways, and also subcutaneous is discussed in other circles. When it comes to dosing, whether it is being discussed in research or practitioner conversations, I am finding it as follows. And this is not meant to be taken as instruction, just reported ranges. On the lighter side, 300 to 600 micrograms per day. And I've also seen up to 1 milligram per day, and is often discussed in 5-day cycles, followed by time off. Second is Selank. So what does Selank do on a cellular level? Selank works on the stress response architecture of the brain. It influences GABA-related signaling, gene expression tied to stress modulation, and nervous system tone rather than sedation. The key distinction is Selank is not a tranquilizer. It doesn't suppress the brain. It reassures it. So, if Semax sharpens the signal, Selank quiets the noise. Think noise-canceling headphones for an overactive nervous system. This is why Selank is often discussed in contexts like anxiety, emotional regulation, stress, resilience, mental overwhelm. More importantly, long-term research discussions have emphasized a lack of physical dependence, which has a very different risk profile than benzodiazepines. When it comes to administration, it's no different than Semax, both intranasal and subcutaneous. Most commonly discussed, intranasal. Nasal route often associated with faster subjective calming. Subcutaneous administration is discussed less frequently reported use ranges, and again, these are not instructions. On the lighter side, 200 to 600 micrograms per day and up to 1 milligram per day. This is often split into 2 daily doses and is frequently discussed in 30-day cycles as well. A key context a lot of people don't realize is that Semax and Selank were both developed in Russia through government-supported peptide research programs going back decades. Semax was first described in the scientific literature around the early 1990s after research through the 1980s, and Selank was developed by the Russian Academy of Sciences as a synthetic analog of an immune-related peptide. In Russia, these are not fringe biohacking compounds. Semax, at least, is listed on the list of vital and essential drugs, a government-approved essential medicines list. Both peptides are prescription medicines in Russia and have been studied clinically for a wide range of neurological and stress-related applications, reflecting decades of research and real-world use. This is part of why their safety profile is considered well characterized in that context. Now, the third is Epitalon. Epitalon operates on a much longer timeline. At the cellular level, it's associated with telomere-related processes, pineal gland signaling, melatonin regulation, and circadian rhythm normalization. Think of it this way. Epitalon isn't a performance enhancer. It's a systems engineer. It helps cells follow the original blueprint more accurately over time. And this is why it's often discussed in anti-aging research, sleep quality improvement, and long-term cognitive preservation. Epitalon is administered subcutaneously. Oral routes do exist, but are generally considered having a much lower bioavailability, if any at all. Same as before, here is some of the reported dosing and not meant as instructions. 5 to 10 milligrams per day, often ran for a 10 to 20 day cycle, and cycled to not be repeated again for at least 4 months, if not 6. Then finally, there is Cerebrolysin. Cerebrolysin is fundamentally different from the others. It is a peptide and neurotrophic factor complex discussed for decades in neurological recovery contexts. Cerebrolysin doesn't stimulate the brain. It delivers the raw repair instructions the brain already knows how to use. The 3 failures. It targets on a cellular level. 1. Neuroinflammation. Microglia shift from destructive to restorative behavior. 2. Metabolic failure. Improved glucose utilization in brain tissue. 3. Energy failure. Restoration of ATP production and neuronal function. This triad matters because cognitive decline isn't random, it's mechanical. Administration routes discussed. Subcutaneous, often as a tolerance test. Intramuscular, intravenous and intranasal. Discussed but with efficiency caveats. Discussed dosing, and again, not dosing instructions. 0.1 milliliters. Subcutaneous test dosing discussed for tolerance. So how do they fit together? These peptides do not compete. They stack logically. Semax, signal clarity and focus. Selank, stress and emotional regulation. Epitalon, cellular timing and longevity. Cerebrolysin, repair and regeneration. Think of these working together. One upgrades software, one quiets background noise, one preserves the hardware, one rebuilds damaged circuits. If that isn't good enough, a little NAD plus may take it over the top. Now, everything up to this point has been research-based discussion. If you're not new to the channel, you know that whenever I have personal research experience with a peptide, I share it openly. So what's the word here? Yes, kind of, and no. I have completed 1 research cycle of Epitalon. Subjectively, I did notice improved sleep, but I want to be very clear. That's not a quantified result, just personal observation. As far as telomere or biological age markers, I did not establish a baseline before starting. And since I only completed the cycle a few weeks ago, it would be meaningless to test any perceived age markers this soon anyway. That said, I do plan to test this in the future with proper benchmarks. I've just begun researching Semax and Selank. With Semax, I do seem to experience a noticeable boost, particularly in mental clarity and drive. That aligns with what I've seen in both research discussions and anecdotal reports, where meaningful effects are often described as becoming clearer over a longer time frame, sometimes closer to 30 days. Selank is still too early in my research process for me to draw any personal conclusions. I have not yet personally researched Cerebrolysin. You could argue that it may have been better to wait on this video until I had more of my own anecdotal data to share. But many of you have asked for a video on these peptides, and I didn't want to hold back information that's already well documented just because my personal research timeline isn't complete yet. We will almost certainly revisit these compounds in the near future as my own research progresses. So, cognitive decline is not a mystery. Focus issues are not moral failures. Anxiety is not weakness. They are biological states, and biology responds to inputs. The question is no longer if intervention is possible. The question is how intentionally we choose to understand it. If this conversation matters to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs better information, not more noise. As always, Any support shown to the channel is much appreciated and it keeps me going and making more videos. Tell me, what is important to you? What would you want to see in future videos?